And so today is the story about Joshua and the children of Israel entering into the promised land. And as you go today, join in. We're only on chapter 7. It's only about not quite a quarter of the way through. So this will keep us going through Christmas at least. And some people are reading it together with their families, but you read it every day and go through this. So, Ephesians 1:18 says this in the Living Bible: I pray that your hearts will be flooded with light so that you can see something of the future God has called you to share. I pray that your hearts will be flooded with light so that you can see something of the future God has called you to share. What's your future look like? I think of the election this week. I've heard people on both sides. Yes! Oh! Our future is bright. Our future is dark. Be strong and courageous. Your hope is in the Lord. Last week's story was taken when the children of Israel came for the first time to go to the promised land. It was at a place called Kadesh Barnea. It was a place of decision, and so they came to the land, and Moses sent 12 spies into the land, and they spied out the land for 40 days. They came back after 40 days and said, wow, what a land, flowing with milk and honey, and great and amazing. Look at the fruit, but there are giants in the land. And they said, 10 of them said, we can't do it. Be strong and courageous. And so there's a choice. There were 2 that said, we can, 2 out of 12. The 10, they influenced the whole crowd. And so all of the people of Israel, a couple million people, they began to moan and murmur and, God brought us out here in the desert. We're going to die. And I just want to tell you something. We're all going to die. So do you want to die going forward into the promises God has for you, or do you want to play it safe? If life were a swimming pool, we tend to like to swim in the shallow end, playing it safe and saying, let's keep it safe. But they were given a choice to see through eyes of faith or eyes of fear and enter the promised land. But this first generation said, no. The choice is that. Eyes of faith. Do I believe God? Is he my strength? Or eyes of fear? Now, the first generation enter eyes of fear. How do you know if you're seeing with eyes of fear? I'm just going to go fill these in for you real quick. How do you know if you're living with eyes of fear? Well, number one is we see problems as defeat. Everybody, you do have problems, right? There is not one of them that will ultimately defeat you. Life, in fact, is a problem. Have you noticed? We see problems as defeat. And so when they saw the challenges, they saw the problems that they would have to enter the promised land, they said, we're defeated. In fact, they began to moan and to groan and say, hey, it'd been better if we died in Egypt. How many know you can take people out of Egypt, but it's hard to get Egypt out of the people? So they were moaning, oh, such problems, we can't do it. We'll be defeated. The second thing, seeing eyes with eyes of fear, is we suffer memory loss. When we see with eyes of fear. Now, I've discovered that at age, how old I am, that I tend to have incredible memory loss. I don't know if it's like the doctor says you get brain cells start missing later in life. I don't have as many brain cells. The brain isn't as strong as it used to be, so I'm trying to pump it up a little bit and get the brain stronger and reproduce the cells in my brain, but they say it's wearing down. But I tell you, I don't think I have any, I don't have a disease yet, but I sure have memory loss. Because I forget in the midst of my life, look what God has done. You know, my name's Smith and I'm from Iowa, and look at the life I've had. Isn't this remarkable? Look at you, look at you, look at you. I mean, there wasn't a hope in heaven for you except the grace of God. And look what he's done in your life. So what happens is when we start seeing life and our problems, we see them through eyes of fear because we forget how good God is and how good God has been to us. That's why we're going to share in the Lord's Supper. We're going to remember who God is and what he's done for us and how he's been working. How many here can testify that you know that God Almighty has helped you, he's blessed your life? You can even look back and pause for a minute and remember, oh yeah, I was at a point there in my life where I was thinking about taking my life, but God stepped in and saved me and protected me. I was thinking I would never make it through, and God took me through. How many can remember God's done something good in your life? That's one reason we need to get together on a Sunday morning, just to remind ourselves. But when we see with eyes of fear, we have memory loss. And it says of the people of Israel, they just totally lost track. They had just come from Egypt. They had just walked through the Red Sea. People say nowadays in our critical thinking that the Red Sea was just marshland like walking through the slough. And so they say it's not a big deal. I say that makes it even a bigger deal because God drowned the whole Egyptian army in shallow water. That's pretty big. God, catch it either way. But they had seen that miracle. They had seen God give them food to eat on a daily basis. All they had to do is go out and gather it. And don't gather more than the days, because if you get more than one day, then it'll spoil. But would they listen? No. But God was providing food for them. He would provide something to drink in the middle of the desert. And then they got complaining about the food that they were being provided with. They said, we want meat to eat. Remember that from the reading in chapter 6? We want some meat. All you give us is this manna. And we're getting tired of manna. Manicotti and banana bread. And any ways you can fix it. Thank you, Keith Green. We want some meat. And God says, you want meat? I will give you meat. And he buried them in quail until the Bible gives the impression they were gagging on the meat. But no matter what they'd seen, they forgot that God had continued to take care of them, and they had memory loss. Okay, number 3, what happens when we see with eyes of fear? Number 3 is we think little of ourselves. In Numbers chapter 13, verse 33, it says, when we went into the land, we appeared to us as though we are grasshoppers, and that's how we appear to them too. There are giants in the land, and we just grasshoppers. And Zach, can we do that picture? It kind of might look something like this. You better get that picture off, because that'll stick in people's minds the rest of the day. We think little of ourselves. We don't think we can handle it. We're just grasshoppers in this life. Number 5, you'll have something to take home after today. Which one were you? Number 4, when we see with eyes of fear, we get prophetic. We get prophetic. We start to prophesy about the way things will be, and that's the way it is with the children of Israel. In Numbers chapter 14, verse 1, first of all, it says they were mourning. They were weeping all night, moaning, and oh, why did God bring us here? And we're going to die in the desert. You will die. You want to die moving on with God, or you want to die going backwards? Why did you bring us up here? They cried all night, it says. They got prophetic. Number 2, in verse 2, it says they were murmuring. They said, who is this leader, Moses? Let's elect a new leader that takes us back to Egypt. And so they were murmuring. They got prophetic, and then they said, we're martyrs. Verse 3, 14:3 says, we're going to die. We're going to die. If we go in and face the giants, we will die. Wouldn't it be better for us to just stay comfortable and die here in the desert? Let's go back to Egypt. Weren't there graves enough in Egypt for us? So they were moaning, they were murmuring, and they were martyrs. Can I just give you a little point here? Right, slip this one in. People who feel like failures are the biggest critics. People who feel like failures are the biggest critics. They said, we're going to die out here. They said, our children will never enter the promised land. And the Lord said, as surely as I live, I will do to you the very things I heard you say. The most damaging thoughts we entertain are lies about ourselves and about God. The most damaging thoughts we entertain are lies about ourselves and about God. We see with eyes of fear. Now, this week was about Joshua and a second generation, and so seeing with eyes of faith. So I'm going to try and wrap it up here, and we're going to share in communion. And so hang on. Seeing with eyes of faith. Be strong and courageous. And God says, if you will follow me, you will be successful. Seeing with eyes of faith, or God's idea of success. So I just pulled out of this chapter 7 in the story, just some simple points that you can hang on to. And man, it's like when you read these chapters each week in the story, it's like, whew, there's a lot packed in there. So what do we do with it? So your message from chapter 7 is? Two of us have the answer. Be strong and courageous. Turn to somebody next to you and say, be strong and courageous. Very courageous. So then you'd say, why? Why should I be strong and courageous? Well, I'm going to give you a few simple answers, and then we're going to share together in communion. Let me just give you a few. You see, in order to live with strength and with courage, it means you got to be stepping out a little bit. It means you got to get out on the limb. That's where the fruit is. You got to take a little risk. And we're not prone to risk. We don't like this risk idea. We want to go for comfort. It's a sure sign that we're going for comfort, or we're fearful, or we're anticipating that we got to hang on to it when we start worrying more than we worship. How many here are prone to worry? How many worried this week because the election didn't go your way? How many are worshiping this week because it went your way? Oh, praise God. And when we lose sight of who God is, we tend to compare ourselves to others. They're the giants, we're the little ones. And we lose sight of the fact that God's on our side. God's with us. So we get drained in this world and in this life of our strength and courage to live life. I do sometimes, and then I gather with you and I get encouraged again. Now, one pastor sent out a request on his Facebook page for people to send back and say, what are 5 word lies that have robbed you of your strength and courage? What are 5 word lies that have robbed you in your story of strength and courage? And he got 240 hits in one day. So let me just give you a few. 5 word lies that have robbed your story of strength and courage. It's too late for you. You messed up too much. No one will want you. It's never going to happen. You will just fail again. You're never going to change. There's plenty of time left. You will always be alone. You failed as a mom. You're just like your dad. God doesn't love you anymore. You know, it's going to be like this forever. You've wasted too much time. God's done giving you chances. You are on your own. Now, those are some of the lies that are given to us that steal our courage and our strength. Have you ever heard any of those in your life? And so God has 5-word truths for us today as we gather together on this Sunday morning. And I just want to share with you quickly just a few from the story of Joshua. And you can write this down. There's a blank area on the back of those notes. And if you want to write something down, you can do that. Here's just a few things to take home. The first point I would say is look at God's promises. And here's the number one promise. Here is the number one promise in 5 words. God says, in order to be courageous, in order to be strong, God says, I will be with you. He says it, God says it at least twice in the first few paragraphs of Joshua. When you read chapter 7, you just go around. When I read through the chapters, I just want to say, take a pen, mark them up, and you can find little themes that run through it. And there's no rhyme or reason. It just helps me concentrate, and I see things. But in the first couple pages, God reminds Joshua and the people, I will be with you. Look at God's promises. You see, sometimes I feel all alone, but I'm not. And I'm telling you, God will be with you. Be strong and courageous, for God will be with you. 5 words of truth. So look at God's promises. Stand on God's word. Now, in this case, what was the word to the people of Israel? I will give you the land. I will give you the land. Now, you need to make the application for you, because maybe there's not land in your future, but God will give you what you need. Peter referenced it earlier. God has given us more than we need to get us to this point. How many here are like 12 or older? And how many have gotten here on more than you need? How many? How many are just like got by just by the skin of your teeth? God gives us more than we need. Isn't that amazing? And God will give you the land. He said to the people, is it 14 times, I will give you the land, I will give you the land, I will give you the land. If God is in charge, he will take care of us no matter what comes down the pike. It's okay. Be strong and very courageous. I'll give you the land. Another observation with seeing with eyes of faith is honor God first. Now this is big. Why did God want to bring the people of Israel into the promised land? Well, there's 3 reasons, but one reason is God wants to make his name known. He wants to reveal himself to the nations, not the geopolitical governments, but to the peoples of the world. And he wants to reveal himself through you to other people. He wants to reveal himself to you. And so his instructions is to the Israelites, honor God first. He said, I'll make my name known through you. Now that goes for you. God wants to make his name known through you. That's true. Honor God first. Now, I must take a moment here to have a little humor, because God is very funny. How many here have a sense of humor? Some of you got crazy senses of humor. I mean, sense of humor is off the map. But you got it. It came to you in good stead because God has the sense of humor. So God says, I want you to honor me first. And Joshua, here's the battle plan. You're going to cross the Jordan River, and you're going to take the city of Jericho. And by the way, what I want you to do is form a marching band. And you'll just go, and here's the plan. The battle plan is you're going to walk around the city walls for 7 days, and many of you know the story. So the battle plan is just be a marching band, and put the trumpets in front, the ark behind, and guards on either side, and go around the walls. And they're going, oh, this is an interesting plan. And so there's the plan. They had to trust and obey. By the way, interesting, in the mix is this lady named Rahab. How does that work out? What is that all about? A marching band and a prostitute. Isn't it amazing the people God uses if they'll only trust him? A woman who was providing for her family the best she knew how in a pagan, ungodly culture, but she had faith in God because she'd heard about all that God had done. And so she said to the spies that were there, listen, I will protect you, but would you take care of my family when you guys take over Jericho? And so God worked through a prostitute and a marching band to conquer Jericho. But here was the deal. As soon as, and this is humorous, come on, forgive me for going there. The pastor said, don't do it. Honor God first. So God says, cross the Jordan River. It's springtime, it's flooded, and they walked across on dry land. Does that sound familiar? And they get to the other side. Now they're in enemy territory. They're near the city of Jericho, and this entire second generation had not taken the sign of the covenant in those days, which was circumcision. All the males would have their flesh cut, and if you read it, it says, and Joshua made flint knives for this spiritual exercise. And so immediately they're in enemy territory, and immediately the only able-bodied people are the ladies. Because the men ain't doing nothing for a while. And that was perfect timing. But here they go, they entered in. You put God first. He says, I want you to identify with me. I want you to honor me. I'm the one that'll take care of you. And then he said, when you take the city, this is Jericho. By the way, there were two walls, one at the bottom of the mound, and it was probably about 12 feet. The first wall was a brick wall about 12 feet high and maybe about the same thickness. And then there was a 6-foot thick wall that maybe went another 26 feet high. That was the outside wall. And then they went up the hill, and then there was another wall up here. And the top of that wall was about 46 feet from the ground level here. 2 walls. Do you know where Rahab's house was? Her house was on the outer wall because she was like out in the slums. You know what I'm saying? If you're the rich people, you're in the middle of the city behind 2 walls. She's out on the outer wall. And God protected her. But there were 2 walls, and they've done, in the last 100 years, they've even excavated there at the city of Jericho, and they've shown how the walls fell down. And they went straight up. And the Jericho, God said, I want you to give me all of the treasures of Jericho. First city, give me all. Honor God first. Then from every city they conquered, God says, you can have it all. Do you kind of get a message there? Because I want to make my name known through you. And then last, I just say, choose your God carefully. God, the God, desires to bless you. I desire to bless you. Everybody say, I desire to bless you. That's God's word to us. And it may not look like we want it to look, but that's God's word to us. Seeing with eyes of faith, God wants us to be successful. We come to the end of the story in Joshua chapter 23 and 24. And it's evident God wants to bless. He's blessed, he's blessed, he's blessed. But Joshua says, now listen, you choose today which God you will serve. And that's what's so subtle about our culture. What God do we serve? I love that. On our money, it says, in God we trust, at least for another year or two before that gets taken off. And that's all right. I mean, I'm not fighting about that issue. That's a small potatoes, but it is a great reminder. On our money, it says, in God we trust. In God we trust. Our motto, in God we trust. So Joshua said to the people, you choose today which God you will follow. Now listen, you can choose to follow the old gods of Abraham's father. You can choose to follow the old gods. You can choose the new gods in the land you're going into, or you can choose to serve the God. It's your choice. Now, how often do we get sucked into worshiping small gods, the gods of this world? I mean, we all get drawn in there. But God says, serve me, and I desire to bless you. Choose carefully which God you serve. And Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We will serve the Lord. 5 words. I will be with you. I will give you the land. I'll make my name known through you. I desire to bless you. We're going to share together in the Lord's Supper. You see, one of the things that the people of Israel had to do is they had to identify themselves with God, and they did it in very specific ways. And one way we do it is by sharing together in communion, and we sang some pretty powerful songs earlier today. Did you notice that? Lord, I surrender all to your strong and faithful. How many here need to surrender all? How many here are worried? Jesus said, those who do not know God worry. Do you know many of us as believers are practicing atheists? Right? Now, it's not to condemn us, but it's to say, how great is our God? So why not give him all? Why play it safe? Why not give him all? Thanks for joining with us today in our live streaming of our service and our message. We're grateful that you joined with us. And if we can serve in any way, we'd be glad to do that. Just check out our website. That'll get you connected in any way that you might like to. And that is greenvalleychurch.net. And we wish you the best and know that you really do matter to God. Have a great day.